send kids to Harvard that weren't prepared to go to Harvard. I think that's quite a myth. In fact, I think those that have the qualities to get to Harvard were before affirmative action were could just completely overlooked. Clarence Thomas is like the perfect example. Regardless of what you think about him, he was able to get to Harvard because of affirmative action, because it focused on finding people that were again like just overlooked for those.
But things ended up changing. It morphed into something else. So what started out as a good program of giving all Black people or people with a lesser chance or lesser opportunity, it started out as that, and then it morphed and I'm not sure who morphed it, but it morphed into, okay, so now we have to have one Black, one Hispanic, one this, one that.
That's not how that works.
But hey, talk to the corporations, talk to the people who hire, talk to the board members who say we need to have a woman on the board, we need to have a Black on the board, we need to have a Latina, a Latinx, whatever on the board. So it morphed from helping us into now
tokenization.
Yes. So you have to have one of this, one of that.
Well, when you start with a country where people only hire you if you're white, that's necessary. And I know that you said that it started good and then ended whatever. And I don't think that affirmative action was perfect by any measure, but we still see really, really bad inequality. So if you're going to get rid of affirmative action, what's the replacement?
Meritocracy.
There's no meritocracy in this country. You look at Elon Musk, he's destroying Twitter. There's no meritocracy. That's ridiculous.
Well, first thing I want to bounce back.
Before I go on, this guy is very triggerable. This guy, he's all about triggering. Everything seems to be getting on his nerves. Meritocracy. Yeah, get in on your own merit. We don't need programs to boost people. No, you work hard, you do what you got to do, and it'll come. Merit, get it on your own merit, not based on the color of your skin. I like that one.
It's not a myth that there are like minorities that are being put into colleges that they're not ready for. If you look at a lot of these top universities, including Harvard, Yale, etc., you're going to see a lot of minorities on academic probation because they are being placed in universities that they are not ready for. They're not cut out for that just yet. And it even just makes sense if you look at how much they have to achieve in order to get there. Asian students on average have to score 450 points higher than a Black student in order to get in the same university. So if you think of the universities that have courses, et cetera, that grade on a curve, you can only have so many people with an A, so many people with a B, etc. So that means that the bottom percentile is going to fail. Who is most likely, just based on logic, going to be the ones failing? It's going to be the people who didn't have the credentials to get there in the first place. And then I have to bounce back to
I want to get you on that point, because I would posit that the people who are least likely to have good outcomes in an academic setting are those who have to work 2 jobs, are those who have to drive there from home because they can't afford a dorm, are those who have to go into crippling financial debt. These are and have other stresses in their life. They can't afford a doctor, they can't afford a dentist, they can't afford anything.
I had to do that too, though.
Those are the
That's
people.
not just Black people. It's not just.
But it's
If we're looking at
overwhelmingly
straight numbers. There are more white people in poverty than Black people.
If you look at the wrong numbers, but if you
I don't know,
actually
what are the
understand what
wrong
you're talking
numbers?
about.
No
The
number
issue is
is
poverty
wrong.
in general, though. I don't think it's like who's in poverty. It's like poverty sucks.
Maybe we should make
matter
college
who's in it.
free, and maybe we want to have
If you have a
affirmative action
program-
wouldn't be that necessary.
it'll get even more ghetto.
If you have a program that says if you are under a certain income level, this is how we'll help you, that will overwhelmingly help Black people at a far greater percentage than it will help white people.
Trump supports Black lives.
I think that President Trump supports all lives. I think that he looks at all American citizens as equal. I don't see him doing anything that would make you feel like he does not support Black lives. That's, of course, going to lead into the conversation of Black Lives Matter, which was a movement and an organization with so much corruption. Donald Trump not supporting that organization doesn't mean that he doesn't support Black lives. It just means that he doesn't support the fraudulent organization that's stealing so much money from so many people to do absolutely nothing with it, nor does he support a destructive movement that is destroying cities, communities, lives, etc. So I don't see why someone would think that President Trump doesn't support Black lives.
I've heard him say he knows all the best Black people. He has all the best Black friends. I do support Black people all the time. Sorry, that was a very bad impression, but I don't think Donald Trump wants bad things to happen to Black people. So in that respect, I think he does support Black lives, but the other side of that is he's not really doing anything. He didn't do anything as president, certainly, to uplift Black people.
The economy affects Black people.
Yeah, I certainly disagree with that point. One of the biggest things I
What did he do for the
supported
economy?
personally, well, yeah, we don't even,
Thriving.
we'll get into that one later. One of the biggest things he did is he secured permanent funding for HBCUs, one of the largest increases we ever saw for HBCUs, personally done by his administration, among many other things. The First Step Act, which, you know, there's a lot of debate about whether it was really the best thing to do, but that was definitely a kiss of love to the Black race. Freeing Alice Johnson for menial drug crimes she committed in the past that had her locked up. She did not get to see her family for years.
Yeah, but that's not like, okay, I did say I agree, but I agree in the sense that Donald Trump doesn't literally want bad things to happen to Black people, like I think a lot of conservatives do. So I think that he just says the most yeah, I do think that. I think he says the things that will get him elected. So I don't think that he has any personal grudges against most people. He just says the most popular thing. So I think like Ron DeSantis would be somebody that I think actually wants Black people to be hurt. So by that standard, yeah, Donald Trump supports Black lives by leaps and bounds.
You think Donald Trump says the most popular thing?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Then why do so many people hate him?
He got elected as president.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He didn't win the popular vote neither time.
That's a
That's
liberal
what your
talking
side
point.
loves to say.
That's
Yeah.
a liberal talking
I'm
point.
helping you here. I'm trying to see the logic in this. Obviously, he says things to be elected as a politician very similarly to how Joe Biden did, except Joe Biden actually has a history of racism.
If he said things that people didn't like, he wouldn't have been our president.
So you like everything that Donald Trump says? You think everything he says is popular?
I love a lot of the things he says. I think he's hilarious. When he said big water, that was one of my favorite quotes. Big water.
Water, big
Water.
ocean water.
He has the funniest one-liners, so I love a lot of the things he says. As far as policy, he sucks, but
I'm just shocked you're wearing a Hunter Biden hat. He likes a different kind of one line.
I know conservatives love talking about his.
No, Coke. It's different. Coke, not.
Oh, I didn't like that. Yo, I did not like that they cut that off right there while he was making such a sweet point about our cokehead Hunter Biden. Oh, he likes one-liners. Yeah. That's Hunter Biden for you. Hunter Biden. What do they call them? The first son? He's the first son of the United States of America. Hunter Biden. Crackhead. Cokehead. But I didn't like that they cut that off because I think Xavier had a few more things to say on crackhead Hunter Biden.
Trump is less of the issue and more so the people that support him, like die hard. They facilitate that kind of like hate, I think, for a lot of people, not just Black people, but like.
I mean, this man took out like a full page in a newspaper calling for the public execution of 5 Black kids. His hotels, all of his businesses have rampant history of denying Black people apartments or whatever. So
I forgot about that. I should not have stepped forward.
Look, I mean, Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump. So I don't think he really cares about anyone, I guess, unless you're like super rich or whatever.
When you look at his history on racial issues, whether it's the shithole countries comment, the plethora of comments he made about Mexican people, just the comments he's made about Muslims, the idea that Trump cares at all about some particular racial minority, I think is a little bit silly. I think Trump will say whatever he needs to say to rile up his base and to get elected.
I don't necessarily think those statements come from a place of hatred. I don't think he was ever saying specifically, oh, if you pray 5 times a day towards the east or towards Mega based on wherever you are, you're a bad person. I think he was saying if you like to fly planes into towers or behead people or throw people off of buildings, maybe you're not the most virtuous person out there.
I supported Trump because he made the economy good. And so the economy then impacted Black people, white people, Latino people, it impacted everybody.
Everyone.
But Trump, he didn't think specifically, I don't think, about Black people. He thought about himself, and he thought about how can I make America great for me, and making him. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go with this guy. And the reason I'm gonna go with this guy is because if he can make America great and he can make that it rise for everybody, I'm going to benefit from that. So that's why I went, and that's why I voted for him. That's why I supported him.
She makes an absolute amazing point. See, Trump wasn't trying to go with, white people, Black people, Latino people, Asian people. He went for America, period, which is a melting pot of all of these people. And he wanted to make America great. And by being in America as a Black person, as 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 the Black community, as Asian community, as white community, as everyone, as all of us Americans. He builds America up, which means he's building you up. The policies build people up, not tweets, but policies build people up. And so that's an excellent point. If all Americans can look at it from Renee's point of view, the way she saw it, okay, Trump, you're a politician, you're here to do this, and you want to lift America up. Well, I'm part of America, and I'm going to be lifted up as well. If everybody can see it that way, without the nonsense about tweets or his personality, if you could see it that way, what's best for America, then we would be in a great place. 2024 would be an easy win for Trump if people thought of these things that way. But no, like our friend here with the Hunter Biden crackhead hat on, these people are deranged. These people are focused. They hate Trump, and no matter what good possibilities is there for Trump to do, they will never be on board with it. Never. And because, well, I guess they hate themselves and they hate the country.
How does that specifically benefit Black people? Again, he's a businessman, but he's also a racist businessman, and like well documented. So like I just
And Biden's not. Biden's
That's
not
well
doing-
yes,
documented.
he is. He created the crime
Okay,
bill.
So
So that's regardless of the
Well,
point.
address the Central Park 5. That's what you brought up, right? How do you feel about that?
well,
he took that full
actually,
page out
okay.
after they were
So
exonerated.
I haven't
He wanted them
dealt-
to be killed,
well,
That is why I didn't
executed,
step forward,
just because they were
of
Black.
That story.
and
But,
he
yeah.
he bars people from attending his businesses or like renting apartments from all his like stupid Trump towers. I just like
I think Trump at that point was, like many people in this room, particularly liberals, a victim of the media. I think he was scared. I think he was ashamed of the things that he heard in the news and wanted to take action himself as a businessman, not as a
Why are
racist.
you infantilizing him?
I don't like also real quick because people keep bringing up this comparison to the '93 crime bill from Biden. That crime bill, this was at the height of like violent crime and the crack epidemic in the United States. The Congressional Black Caucus supported that crime bill. Everybody in the United States supported that crime bill. The idea that that crime bill was like some racist piece of legislation that Biden was just wheeling out because he hates Black people, and that's somehow comparable to the Donald Trump's treatment of the Central Park 5 that were already exonerated, that wasn't a victim of the media. The media said they were done. They were exonerated in court. They weren't there.
As I understand it, the prosecutor of the 5, he was a Black guy, and so in being a Black guy, he went and he looked at all the evidence and said these guys are guilty.
Black people can also be racist against other Black people.
Or just
Black
make
guy-
mistakes.
So if anybody does anything you disagree with in regards to the Central Park 5, even if they themselves are a Black person, they're just a self-loathing Black person, they're just a racist Black person.
If they disagree
That
with me, they're
prosecutor was
racist.
doing his job.
That's my policy. If they disagree with me, they're racist.
I like that.
I
That's how
think
you-
Trump
Yeah,
I
like
think
that's a
Trump
hilarious
has
policy.
shown a history of ignorant at best and racist at worst behavior. I didn't vote for him or Hillary because I just don't see him as a conservative hero. I don't even think he's a conservative.
Fake
personally.
conservative. I voted Trump in 2016, just so you all know. So I'm just saying.
So I need to I need you to elaborate on if people disagree with you, they're racist, just in general.
I was just
He's
kidding.
just yeah.
you never know.
Just like
one
the
of those
hat.
kind of
It's,
moments.
sorry if I triggered you. I'm sorry.
you made
No,
a
I'm not
point.
sure. I just
You made a
need to know.
point
Okay.
a couple minutes back where you said he just kind of says these things to rile up his base. Why does he need to do that at the expense of Black people then?
He doesn't do that at the. I am a member of his base, and I'm sitting there like, oh man, this is amazing. And I don't know. You can call me
So
self-loathing, you can call me self.
so you're
you can call me
saying calling
racist.
for
I
the
can call you
public
stupid.
execution of 5 Black men that were exonerated to
When has
rile
he
up
done
his
that
base?
during the campaign trail? He didn't do that when he was a politician.
Well,
he did that when he
again,
was a
it's
scared businessman
everything.
in New York.
It's
feeling
everything
bad.
Steve said about the comments about Muslims, the comments about Mexican immigrants. Why
Not-
does he
never
need-
about Mexican immigrants, never about Muslims, about terrorists and about criminals and rapists. These are very important delineations to make. And if you believe
I
that
think
what
you
you fed the media
understand,
about,
or
oh, it's
I
all
think
Mexican immigrants, I think it's more of you being, oh man, oh, these poor Mexicans, they need to be supported. It's more of that savior complex. Wow,
What was
we're
the
back
rationale
again.
behind axing or trying to axe DACA? Were these people were registered with the federal government? They were in school. They were doing everything that they needed to do. They had no home elsewhere. They were brought into this country as minors. Like, what's the explanation for
I
that?
think
Like,
that requires more nuance. Like I mentioned before, I
you already
think there were
paid
some
for their
people.
education.
I think
Why
there
would
were
you
some
wanna kick
people
them out?
feeding him bad policy advice, thinking, "Oh, this will be really good for your base," and he's doing a lot
You're
as a
just
president.
infantilizing
That's okay.
him.
That's okay if we feel that way. But
So,
at the end
if I take responsibility for something, if I say he has responsibility for something, well, then you're right. But if I'm saying, well, maybe there are some people around him advising him falsely,
Dude,
it's infantilizing.
he
him.
was the president.
There's no good way.
He
through this
called
for
the
him.
shots.
But if someone was
What are you
advising-
talking about?
the only path forward to solving illegal immigration starts with amnesty for everybody here. The reality is there's some 10 to 15 million illegal immigrants here. We're not deporting them
There's
all.
With the
more.
people who are already here, that's a lot more of a messy, nuanced conversation. But as far as people coming in, I do think we need stronger borders and actual like vetting happening.
And I just want to say, in Ronald Reagan's day, he was given the promise. He said, look, if you go ahead and you pass this particular bill, we'll give these people amnesty and we're done. And it didn't happen. We didn't. Illegal immigration continued even after Reagan already said we will give these people amnesty. So that's why we get a burr up our butt, because he had already done it.
Hopefully the devil's giving him amnesty.
True.
That's terrible.
No, that's base. Thank you.
Tasteless.
Wow.
Ninth circle, baby.
What a disgusting joke. He says perhaps the devil is giving Reagan amnesty. What a disgusting thing to say. It's
My political beliefs have changed from the past.
I grew up in a conservative household, actually, in Ohio. And my parents were always pretty political, so I always stayed political. I was very religious as a teenager. Sometime during college and then afterwards, especially during COVID, my sister actually indoctrinated me into a more leftist position. And I overcorrected a little bit. I started becoming pretty cringy as far as like, sit down and let the minorities all talk, right? Don't say anything, don't speak over them, etc. They would, it was like the whole you can't speak over Candace Owens, even if she's literally a Nazi kind of thing. So I stand by that. So yeah, I kind of leveled out, thankfully, and I'm less cringe now.
Did you? Are you?
I cringed.
This is leveled out. Imagine if we would have been here a year ago.
I mean, maybe I am being cringe. Who cares?
So I grew up conservative, but I did have more left-leaning ideas about like Black Lives Matter and critical race theory. And I was watching a lot of YouTube and, I did agree that Black people were oppressed and all of these different things and that we were kind of got the short end of the stick. And during 2020, when there was, everything crazy was happening, and I started organizing rallies against the mandates because I thought that they were just totally unconstitutional and un-American. And then George Floyd dies. And initially I was like enraged like everybody else. And then it started to become this weird, like political like agenda masquerading or behind his face. Like the face of what was actually happening started to peel off. And I was like, oh, I mean, I would counter protest BLM activists at my town square when I lived in Texas. And they were some of the most just bitter, vile, horrible people you could ever meet. Yep. Meanwhile, like the Confederate group that would protest there against them also, they were like the nicest people ever to me, ironically.
I grew up in a Democratic, not a Democratic household, but kind of apolitical, but everybody was Democrat. And then I got a job. And when I got a job and I saw all the taxes come out and I started looking to the left and to the right and going, oh, my money's whittling away over here. And I said, you know what? After Reagan, I'm just going to go ahead and declare myself a Republican. And I've been a Republican ever since.
My mom is pretty liberal. She married my stepdad when I was like 15, 16 in high school. And he's super conservative, like loved Trump, diehard Trump fan. And they had a lot of like back and forth, hearing the two sides, like people who are on such polar opposites just like argue all the time about stuff, seeing that there's a lot of similarities in both sides, like the far radical left and the far radical right. They have a lot of similarities. They just don't want to come and like see it.
I started off actually kind of similar to you. I went to a Jesuit high school. I grew up very conservative. My mom is Cuban, so ride or die Bush supporter who is now a ride or die Trump supporter. I think the point of my life when I was the most like libertarian was probably the lowest point of my life financially. And I think it's because something that conservatives do really well is they make you feel like you can always like succeed as long as you work hard enough. And that's something that progressives and liberals suck at, that you're a victim of systemic racism, you're black, so you're going to be discriminated against, you're a woman, so nobody's going to care about your feelings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Republicans will tell you, listen, if you work hard, you can do whatever you want, like just as long as you're willing to put in the work. And I felt that way up to the moment where I was losing my house, where I had an ex-girlfriend that was pregnant, where I had been fired from my previous job. There was a whole bunch of horrible stuff going on in my life. And I very, very luckily got into online content creation. And from there, as I started to make more money, I started to pay more taxes. When I get older and I look at taxes that come out of my paycheck, I care a little bit, but it was just so funny to me that back when I was making 15, 20,000 a year, I'm like, I got to vote for the lower tax bracket, blah, blah, blah. Like I'm barely paying any taxes anyways. And, now that I'm older, like if the government wants to take, a few, 10, 20, whatever, how many more $1,000 out.
You just said you worked hard.
I did, but I got very, very, very lucky doing so. Very lucky.
You think it's just luck?
It's not just luck, but the difference is that born into a wealthier family, you can make so many more mistakes in life. And when you're born poor, you get like one or two before your life is over. And that's really sad to me.
Yeah, so I used to be a liberal. I voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016, as much as I regret that now. My family was pretty left-wing. Some of the people in my family were like radically left, like would refer to white people as blue-eyed, redheaded devils, things of that nature. And as I got older, I actually started being really outspoken for BLM. I was supposed to be on a reality show teaching people how to be a BLM activist. At the time, I did a deep dive on BLM and I started to realize all of these lies. So then I took a step back. I'm like, okay, what else am I being lied to about? And I started looking at the Democratic Party and questioning my own loyalty to being on the left.
I personally think both sides tend to be racist in different ways. I don't think the government is on the side of the people in general, and that's just me being, a radical.
When I was young, I used to jump for joy and say, oh yeah, Obama, black president, that's so amazing. He's the same color as me. But when I started to do more research, one of the biggest things I was confused about is, well, why is he a Democrat? What is a Democrat? I did more research about the Democrat Party. And sure, you guys are going to pop off about the head saying, oh, there's a party switch in the Southern strategy and all these things.
Which is true.
Which you may say is true. I don't believe it is true at all.
You're
I
wrong.
understand, you may think I'm wrong.
You are.
However, one of the biggest questions I had was, why is Obama in the same party as the people that started the KKK, the same people that voted against the Civil Rights Act, the same people that are on the news talking about how black people aren't able to accomplish anything and need to be on welfare and need to be promoted with affirmative action and things of that nature.
I also, in terms of, I guess, of my,
Hold on, friend. Hold on. That was a really interesting say there. So just like everybody else, I had to go and do my own research. Like I had to go and find out for myself, what is Republican, what is Democrat, and where do I fit in the middle? And I came out conservative. And so, and because of the policies and the things that I saw, like I went back to like years and years and years ago just to see, who are the Democrats and who are the Republicans, and how is this all made up? Like, what is the story? What is the history? And so like Chandler there, I found out that the Democrats are the party of the KKK. I found out like there were so many bills that the Democrats did not pass that would have benefited Black people, but Republicans passed those bills. And we're talking back in the like early 1800s and back then. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Democrats did that, but Republicans did that. And the more I researched, the more my conservative values kind of got stronger and stronger and stronger. And so again, and I'll just bring abortion up real quick. When we look at the parties and we look at who's for life and who's for death, that's where it ends. That's really where it all ends. Who's for life and who's for death. That's where I end up at the end of the day. That's where I end up. And if you say Republican is for life and Democrat is for death, then I will be Republican all day long, and conservative as well.
my political journey. I was raised conservative, actually. And then high school became, I guess, sort of apolitical. And then throughout college, and I guess just throughout my life since then, I think I guess you can call me a progressive, you can call me, socialist, whatever you, but I guess that's, in the area of where I fall. You said that you were a Bernie fan in 2016, and then you transitioned to being, I guess, more conservative. I guess, I don't know. To me, Bernie Sanders, from what he said to what you think now, what was the shift?
For me, it was socialism because back then I was a very broke college kid and I just had this mentality that everything should be free. And I was feeling a bit entitled, like everything should be handed to me because I was Black, because I was very much in that mentality. As I learned more about free markets, as I learned more about capitalism, I started to appreciate that much more. I started to appreciate small business much more, limited government, low regulations. I just started to like that much more. But I would say just more when it comes to economics, I don't agree with him.
Reparations are necessary.
Ooh. Before they jump into the reparations, so he believes reparations are necessary. Oh, these two. Okay. Reparations are necessary. Well, if you guys watch this channel, then you know, for me, reparations makes no sense at all. There's no point in having the conversation about reparations for Black people because uh, everybody had a part in building this country. Everybody had their own parts in how this country turned out. Yes, Black people was a great part of that, but slavery has been over for so long now. And trying to get money to pay the descendants of people who contributed to this country, however that may be, I think it's ridiculous. You will never stop paying. You will never stop giving money. You will never stop giving money because of this. Like it's never going to end because we're continue to have more people are going to continue to be born and they're going to be, well, I'm Black, my descendants were slaves 8,000 years ago, I deserve money. And that's how that's going to continue to go. So I don't support reparations, but let's see how this conversation goes.
When we talk about reparations, I think that doing reparations in the way that a lot of people think of it, where we just give it to Black people, I'm not an expert on this, but I think it would be more income-based, and that in itself, like I said earlier, would disproportionately benefit Black people, because if you recognize that they are disproportionately affected by a systemic injustice, then doing it on like a class level would uplift proportionally more Black people than white people or any other race.
Yeah, I think like mostly like Black GIs that were left out of like the New Deal, for instance, that to be able to come back and as a white American, as a white veteran, to get a home loan and then build that generational wealth, you could not get that as a Black American. So there needs to be, I think, reparations. I don't care really what form it comes from. I think free healthcare, free college, so that everyone has like an equal opportunity to educate themselves, to build a better life for themselves. So it's sort of like, and I think Germany is also a perfect model to follow. By don't issuing, first of all, a formal apology, which we haven't even done that. But also just like donating to like different funds, and just I think a more equitable society, striving for that, is reparations in and of itself.
Before they get started, I made a video not too long ago where we talked a little bit about reparations. Oh, Miriam Williamson. So for me, I believe that even though the welfare system was not built for Blacks alone, but it is Blacks that's really taken over that space. And so I would argue to say that that is a form of reparations, because a lot of people, a lot of Black folks that's on welfare, I mean, you're continuously receiving money from the government, and you're receiving housing, Section 8 housing from the government. You're receiving food stamps. You're receiving a check. And then there's the Social Security, the SSI, the disability that, everybody has. Like, I've met people with like a mother with 4 children and the whole family has SSI. Everybody is just living at home off the government. So I believe that reparations has been put in the place in form of these things. And so not everybody benefit or qualify for it, but I believe that this is a form of reparations. And so I don't see any more that should be done here, because it's never going to end. It's never going to end. The begging, that is, for more money and 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 more money.
I have no problems with reparations if they had happened initially during the slavery or the civil rights movement or any of that. But to try and do that now logistically just doesn't really make any sense. And where would this money come from? We're in so much debt as a nation. Would I get this money? I'm biracial or triracial. Do mixed people get it? And do Irish people get reparations when they were indentured servants?
I think for reparations, if you can find specific instances of somebody being actually deprived of something, whether specific instances of the 40 acres and a meal promise, or whether you can find specific cases of Chinese people building railroads or Irish people, or whatever, people being deprived of things, that's okay. But otherwise, yeah, it's a logistical nightmare. There's no possible way that we'd be able to do it well.
Yeah, America's unique because we have bent over backwards for decades now, putting minorities in a position of privilege. I feel like we have done so much to give back to the communities that were obviously wronged. And I agree with both of you. Had this happened a long time ago, I would understand it. If we had specific incidences that we could trace where people were just completely screwed over, I would respect it. But right now, I don't deserve a payment for something my great-great-great-great-grandparents went through. And I don't think that white people are responsible for paying that to me either.
I know we don't want to use the word virtue signaling, but it's sort of like a bribe for a vote in a way, at least in my opinion. In states like California, where they've been throwing around the idea of, oh, we want to pay out this much money to every black citizen in there in this state, it's like, oh, are you serious? Because this is kind of like a joke, in my opinion.
I think that if we impose reparations now, I think it would rip America apart. I think that we're already separated enough as it is, and now you're going to have people walking around going, "You owe me money. You owe me money. I'm not paying you any money." It would just really rip us apart.
Giving somebody money doesn't mean anything if they don't know what to do with the money or how to handle the money. So if the primary issue in Black culture or with Black people is generational trauma, then maybe they need more therapy than they need money, honestly.
So I'd like to bring up a point. I think she made it. Aaliyah made the point of who's going to get it? Mixed Black people? I mean, what about Blacks who are not born here, but, have family here, immigrants, for example? They're Black. They suffered through slavery too. It's where does it end? Where does it end? Who gets the money, and exactly where does it come from? And how long do they continue to get it? It's insanity. It's never going to stop. It's never going to stop. And she made the same point. If it had happened back then, say, 200 years ago, whatever, maybe then you could say, okay, then we know who this money is going to. But listen, people have been born and died and born and died, and generations later, it doesn't make any sense.
Conservatives are also against.
Well, that's kind of my argument. If there is that generational trauma or whatever, I think examples of free healthcare, they could see a therapist and not be, fall into debt. And I think the argument of the logistical nightmares of it, I think if we want to pay for something in this country, we usually find a way to do it, especially when it comes to the military. So, we pay for multi-billion-dollar jets all the time. It's not the dollars,
it's who's supposed to get them.
Not to attack progressives, but that is the most progressive idea in the world. Is I can see the headlines reparations voted on in Congress to be paid in the form of free therapy for people in the hood. That just sounds like the funniest thing in the world. But
well, I also don't think it's going to come directly from white person to Black person. Your lineage affected his lineage.
It is, though. In San Francisco, they were going to raise the average family, or the average household in San Francisco was expected to pay $600,000 each with the $5 million per Black person proposal that they had. And I used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was repulsed by that because you have so many homeless veterans on the streets, and they were going to give Black people a home for as little as $1 just for being Black. Mind you, slavery wasn't even in California. So why that was going to be the case, I don't understand, but it's extremely unrealistic to think that the average family in San Francisco can afford that.
That's because Newsom wants to get reelected.
Okay, but you don't really care about homeless veterans, right?
That's just
you
a
don't support.
idea.
You don't know
I
me.
feel all your arguments are ad hominem.
But you're
literally
here as a
every
conservative.
single one ad
You're here as a
hominem.
conservative. So what policies do you support for homeless veterans?
there's ways to address, I mean,
Specifically.
for homeless in general.
That's a
Yeah.
whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say that we didn't find a middle ground in there.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's a great ending note. White liberals have a savior complex.
So that last conversation was really, really interesting. It's always interesting to talk about these things, especially, this reparations conversation. It's insanity what these people propose. It's like nobody knows who's gonna get what. We need to just. I say it many, many times before in other videos. We just need to move on. We need to just sit this down, pick up our bed and walk, right? Like we're moving on with it. We're moving on. We're going to let it be. It's happened. It's done. Slavery was not unique to Black people. Matter of fact, I watched the Joseph movie over the weekend, and I watched Pharaoh and enslaving the Israelites. So again, slavery was not unique to Blacks. We need to just move on.
Well, I gotta say, this is a shock. I never expected all 4 of you to just come forward and admit it, but you know what? I'm happy with these results.
I just think it's a lot of people, I guess, people, of the left, whatever, can kind of fall into that trap of thinking that, Black people as a monolith need to be saved as a whole.
I have no shame about it. I have a savior complex as an older brother, and I will save you whether you like it or not. So that's just me.
Well, it's definitely not, because a lot of us are really just exhausted of being viewed as our skin color. Because when you have this mindset that you need to save Black people and we're just sitting here minding our own business and living our lives the way we want to, I don't know why it is that people feel this immense pressure to be so apologetic and just always trying to cater and coddle to Black people when we just want to be treated like everybody else. We're equal for a reason.
I think especially recently with a lot of riot stuff that's gone on or protest stuff that's gone on, people on the left tend to infantilize a lot of different types of protesters, and especially even talking to, some of the other Black content creators I do content with, when you hear a lot of progressives come out and say, well, they don't have a choice but to riot or break into this store, or, well, they're stealing, these electronics or shoes for good reasons, you just don't realize it. I think a lot of people kind of look both ways, and it's a little bit weird that there's such a complex on the left to excuse like every single possible negative behavior from somebody, as long as they're a skin color that you're kind of in charge of protecting.
Yeah.
I find that very offensive.
Yeah.
I find
It's
it
really
extremely,
insane.
it upsets me to hear that, because we're just like you. We just have a different skin color, and to hear that you have to help me is offensive to me. I can do it on my own.
Well, we have to break down sometimes why these riots happen. MLK once said that riots are the voice of the unheard. So if you are to address the problem and stop the riots, you have to address the underlying inequality that has historically been pervasive. Even if you as individual people are doing fine and you don't want anybody else to get in the way of that, that's cool. And I'm not going to be the one to get in the way, but the disparities are undeniable.
So if you take pride in having like a white savior complex, what is it that you think that you're doing to save Black people? And what is it that you think that you're saving Black people from?
I am trying to make the world a better place through whatever means I can.
But you're doing it on the backs of us.
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I actually do. I feel like you want to be a savior and you're using me to make yourself feel good. That's what I'm hearing.
How am I hurting you?
You're not letting me have my own voice. You're not letting me speak.
How? You're speaking now?
No,
You're cutting her off.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I have to.
Yeah. Well, what's happening? I mean, you're speaking right now. You're speaking right now in this particular setting.
Mhm.
But what you're saying is, like, you took it back to riots and so forth, and it makes it seem like the only way that we as Black people can have a voice is by riots, and then you need to come along and you need to say, okay, poor little Black child, let me help you. That's offensive to me, and I feel like you're making yourself feel good about trying to help us, and
I also think that, like, when we talk about damage, I think especially when it comes to a lot of the shoplifting stuff that's going on in certain cities, you get a lot of white people that live in nice suburbs saying things like shoplifting is no big deal, that's fine. And then you'll catch YouTube videos of them later on being in a Walgreens in like a shoddy neighborhood, and they're like, man, why is the deodorant behind a locked case? It's very easy to sit behind a gated community and say, oh, well, it's not a big deal. They steal because they have to. Riots are the language of the unheard. I think people haven't read the full context of that quote. When MLK was saying riots were the language of the unheard and you need to address the underlying condition, he wasn't condoning the rioting. He was just understanding it.
Obviously, there are a bunch of white people that feel they need to be a savior, but I think there's a difference between helping and saving. Like, I don't think I would need to save Black people, but I would tremendously love to help and make sure everyone has like equal outcome, or not equal outcome, but at least equal opportunity, which in my opinion, I feel we do not have in this country.
Saving Blacks, helping Blacks. I don't mind help, but again, we all make choices in our lives, and so therefore we've made bad choices that leads to bad things and put us in bad situations, and we all do it. So I don't mind help, but you can't save people unless somebody wants to be saved. And so you come out here, I'm going to save Black people. I'm going to do what I need to do to save Black people. I'm going to No, it's just like anything else. You just can't do it. It's up to the individual and what it is that they are looking to do with their life. So don't insult me by saying, yeah, I'm going to save you because you're Black, because you're being oppressed by the white man. You're thinking, you vote for Trump. I'm going to change your mind so you can see things my way because, I'm going to think for you and I'm going to show you the right way. I'm going to show you the right things. And no, you can't do that. We're all individuals here. We're all individuals with our own minds. And thank you for trying to save me, but no thanks.
This is awkward. Hi, guys. So I didn't step forward just because I don't want to broad brush all white liberals as having a white savior complex. I have experienced white liberals who do have that, and they're very unpleasant people. But I don't think every single white person who's a liberal or who is an activist for BLM or any of those things necessarily has a white savior complex. I think that there's a lot of white people who genuinely think that Black people are oppressed and they want to help, and that's what they're told.
What it seems like to me, when most people have savior complex, regardless of whom they're trying to save, it's like they're taking real pain and real trauma and using that as a way to push this political agenda, but also to alleviate themselves of whatever guilt that they feel unnecessarily. Like, I don't know why a white person today would feel guilty for things that happened decades ago, let alone something that happened centuries ago.
I've never seen a white person say, I personally feel guilty for slavery. Maybe they're out there, but I've never heard that.
Yeah, in second grade when they...
Again, I've heard it, but why? But why would they? They weren't responsible. Maybe their family owned slaves, or maybe, maybe, who knows? But they are not personally responsible. I don't expect anybody white that I meet to say, Amania, I'm sorry that you were enslaved. I wasn't enslaved. I mean, it happened to people. Yes, it happened to ancestors. Yes, but we need to move on.
Taught us about slavery, almost every kid in my classroom would spend their entire time looking at Black kids in that classroom. How was I supposed to not think, wow, these people are feeling guilty for something that they have no involvement in and I have no involvement in?
Every kid in my classroom understood the context.
People hate feeling uncomfortable, and obviously you don't want to feel like the bad guy, and so I feel like it comes from a place of like, oh, well, like, let me make sure that I'm different and like I'm showing you that I want to like help you, but it comes across like I think it can land very poorly.
And it comes out more like, okay, like maybe you're more racist than, like maybe you are racist. You have nothing to do with it. And they make you feel so guilty. And I'm so tired of seeing this, that they make people feel so guilty. Like, you can't speak your mind. You can't say this. You can't do that. Black people are fragile because their ancestors were slaves and we have to protect them at all costs. And it's like, no, you don't have to. It happened. Everybody acknowledge it. And we're moving on.
You what? Stop it. Stop
Okay.
it. Because what happens is when you put yourself as the white savior, what you do is you elevate yourself above the black person because you feel then like you have to save us. So just stop it. Just treat everybody regular and normal. Just like I would treat you regular and normal, you treat us regular and normal rather than trying to save us.
I just got one thing I wanted to bring up earlier about taxes, because you were saying that you had your job and you were talking about how like you get the tax every time and you're like seeing your tax go up. I worked in nursing homes in 2020 COVID. The last thing that was on my mind when I watched 60 and 70-year-olds on their deathbeds suffocating to death was taxes. I was worried about healthcare. I didn't give a shit about taxes in that time. So when I go to work every day, that's what I see. That's what I want to fix.
I see you once again elevating yourself above the rest of us, and particularly at me, a white man elevating himself above a black person.
He
called me a bootlicker.
He
called me a bootlicker.
Oh no, I triggered them all. I'm sorry. I'm
not
sorry.
triggered. I'm chilling, buddy.
Yes,
so what
you
I
are.
hope comes out of this
chilling.
conversation is that we're all Americans, and because we're all Americans, we know that America has a bunch of problems, and I think every person here wants to solve the problems, and I think everybody is bringing what they have to the table with their ideas on how to get us to unify. This kind of stuff, right? But you got something in there. Hopefully, I mean, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you have something in there that's redeeming about you that would bring all of Americans together. So I hope that we end on the note of American.
UNITY.
I would like to say we're all made in the image of God. Exactly. And so we're all have our inherent worth just because we're made in his image, and we should treat each other as fellow image bearers, not just by the color of our skin. I mean, as Martin Luther King said.
He also did not like capitalism.
I think something that's really challenging, I've definitely been guilty in the past of throwing around the Uncle Tom word. I used to be hardcore progressive. I'm still relatively progressive. But something that I've learned as time has gone on is being a white person isolates you from a lot of the different types of racial struggles that people go through. And those struggles can take a lot of different forms. Not just, was my ancestor a slave, and not just is my culture bad, but sometimes in the way that, people grow and develop, right? Like, am I actually choosing these political beliefs because they mean something to me, or is it because I'm black or my parents are black? If I speak a certain way, am I betraying my race? If I am a political orientation, am I a bootlicker? And I think that it's important when you're coming from a progressive point of view to understand that even though there are conservatives that are black people, you have to treat them as individuals and not just come at it with this, like, you're black, you're a conservative, therefore here's like 6 or 7 different slurs that I can use against you, but they're approved because I happen to be on the progressive side.
Oh boy, what a conversation. That was really awesome. So thank you guys for stopping in. Let me look at this and see what happened. Thanks, guys. Who's in there? Oh God, how do I find out? SS Will oh God. Wileysden. I'm sorry. Thank you for coming by. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And it was really good having this conversation. I may do more of these and instead of going the other route. So thanks again. Make sure you take care, like, subscribe to the videos, and I will see you next time. Where am I? I will see you next time. Bye. Oh my God, I'm so hot. Bye-bye. Thank you.